Thank you for joining us. The very best way to learn about Israel is to visit and see for oneself the history, past and present, and the astonishing achievements of the State of Israel. Our guest today is the Israel Government Tourist Office Consul to the Midwest region, Consul Omer Eshel. He is a fourth-generation resident of Moshav Merchavia in Israel's northern Jezreel Valley. He majored in historical geography and religion at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and will join us following these messages. To learn more about the Life Extension Foundation and free membership, go to prolongevity.com.
My name is Omer Eshel. I'm the Consul of Tourism of the Israel Government Tourist Office Midwest region, based here in Chicago. And I'd like to personally invite each and every one of you to visit the land of Israel, the land of the Bible, the land of our ancestors, and also the land of modern, the land of understanding, the land of museums, the land of books, the land of cafes, the land of wine, the land of beer, the land of everything you can possibly imagine. Because in Israel, once you visit Israel, you'll never be the same. See you in Israel.
With us now is Consul Omer Eshel of the Israel Government Tourist Office. A pleasure and privilege to have you with us, sir.
Shalom, and thank you for having me.
Omer, tourism is an essential component not only for the economy, but also because when people visit Israel, they can see for themselves and experience the land, and not only see all of the important aspects that everybody in the world should know about. Why is tourism even more important today than ever?
Well, tourism, when you look at it, it's one of the major wheels of economy. If you look in terms of numbers, and us government, we love our numbers. If you look in terms of numbers, every 25 tourists equals one job. Meaning every group, or let's say every half a group, equals one family that get dinner. That's on the economic side of it. The other thing is that we believe in the Ministry of Tourism that the best form of hasbara, or the best form of advocacy to Israel, the best form of someone to really understand what it's all about, is being in Israel. One of the lines that I use a lot, and I say it full-heartedly, is stand with Israel by standing in Israel. When people come to the land of Israel, they see the truth for their own eyes. They see the truth of the Bible. They see the truth of the prophets. They see the truth of who we are, what the moral value that are actually combined to everybody, us and all of Christendom, because we all follow the same book. When you look, when people see those 10 commandments being applied by the government laws, that brings reassurance to people's beliefs back here in the States.
This is all very interesting and of course essential, and I have an unpleasant question for you. The constantly changing Middle East, with the incessant wars, the so-called Arab Spring becoming a nightmare of a winter, and of course the atrocities perpetrated against themselves, each other, and terrorism against Israel, provocations and bombardments. How does this affect tourism to Israel?
Well, it's a very interesting concept to look at it, because if you look at the number of tourism in the 80s, when we had problems with Lebanon, you would have seen a decline in tourism and a very, very, very slow return to normal. Actually, now, we're now in November, almost November of 2014. 2 months ago, we had the skirmish down in Gaza, that our airport was targeted, not bombed, targeted, and there were flights stopped for 48 hours. So you would imagine that we see a humongous destruction of tourism. The fact of the matter is, not at all. We see a very, very well recovered. If you look actually between the month of January till the month of September from the U.S., we have a decline of about 3%. That's about it. If you take the entire year, of course, if you take the time of the skirmish, yes, you have 30% decline. However, it's only 30% decline, meaning 70% still came to Israel. So to answer the question, I think that today, after this, we call it a post 9/11 world, people start to understand that the threat of terrorism is not just their problem there in the Middle East. It's a problem that can happen, it can strike in London, in New York, in Chicago, in Madrid, anywhere in the world. So actually it's interesting to see how the quick recovery happens because of people understanding that terror is a global problem, not just Middle Eastern problem.
What is being done to educate the world population that their association of the word Israel with problems, rock throwing and terrorism is totally wrong, and Israel actually is a very modern country that never goes to sleep. There are lines at restaurants at 2 a.m. Israel is really a fun, wonderful tourist destination, in addition to the fact that there's also great meaning there for all religions, all faiths. What is being done to change the concept people have and improve the image Israel has as a tourist destination?
In the past few years, we see a very interesting increase of exposure of Israel, especially Tel Aviv. Israel is the Holy Land. There's one Holy Land. There's Holy Land in Florida, but that doesn't count. Israel is the Holy Land. From the dawn of history, the first pilgrim who came to Israel because of religion was Abraham. So ever since then, we have a tourism industry in Israel. Ever since those three angels in the tent, we have the tourism industry. Slowly we see today that Tel Aviv finds a very, very major cut in the Israeli economy, in the Israeli tourism. For example, National Geographic named it one of the top 10 beach cities in the world. That in comparison to the Bahamas, in comparison to Florida, in comparison to the wonderful beaches of Spain. So Tel Aviv is ranked on 10 best cities in the world. And we send, as the Ministry of Tourism, we send delegations and TV camera crews and reporters and journalists to go and to see for themselves. They are our shofar. We believe that if you will pay for an advertisement, 70%, we know that, 70% will say, okay, they paid for it, I'm not going to listen to them. But if I'm sending a reporter that I'm not paying him, it's just the trip itself, I know that my product, my tourism product is amazing, and that's why I'm sending him over. And I would say 99.9% of the cases, the reviews that we get back are outstanding.
Well, Tel Aviv, of course, is a leading cosmopolitan city, wonderful city. Tell us about the amenities Israeli hotels have from Tel Aviv to Eilat, Jerusalem, and so forth.
A very good question that you raise. A lot of people see Israel and compare us to the destinations in our neighborhood, such as Egypt, such as Tunisia and North Africa. But the problem is that they are not a first world amenities. The resort that you're going to stay in Egypt, only the resort is a first world amenity. You step out, you're in a third world country. In Israel, it's a top to bottom, side to side, Western country. The roadsides are in English, the menus are in English. You can call and speak to 95% of Israelis speak English because of the British mandate. So the amenities are as such as an American or European standards. So you will find anywhere from a hostel or even campgrounds all the way to 5-star resorts. So the same amenities that you have here in the States or in Europe, you will find in Israel. And the beautiful thing about it, not just in one city in Israel, across the nation. Again, it's a Western country, top to bottom, side to side.
How interesting the point you just made that in some other countries there may be some fancy resorts on various Caribbean islands and elsewhere, but the moment you step outside, you're in a third world country and with all the dangers associated with that. Interesting point. And of course in Israel you can ski on the Golan and then hours later be snorkeling in Eilat. Tell us about this interesting variety.
It's amazing when you look at Israel how much noise we make as a small country. By the way, it's not because of the state of Israel. We were always like that. A third of humanity for the past 4,000 years are praying to Jerusalem. It's nothing new. Israel is the size of a third of Lake Michigan. You can fit 3 states of Israel in Lake Michigan and you're still going to have room to swim about. That's just to understand the size of it. But the landscape is absolutely incredible. We have 6 different climate zones. I'll give an example for our audience here. When I drove for the first time here in the Midwest from Chicago to St. Louis, the GPS said go straight for 160 miles. My reaction was, really? And all I saw is cornfields, beautiful cornfields, but that's about it. In Israel, if you drive for 160 miles, you're going to end up in Cairo. So you can, in a day, and you're so correct, in a day you can start in the Golan Heights, ski in the Hermon Mountain, which is a part of the Alps. Many people don't know that. That's the tip of the Alps.
Huh, I did not know that.
The Hermon Mountain is the tip of the Alps. So you actually in the Alps, geologically speaking, and you can ski over there in the wintertime. 3 hours later, you will be floating in the Dead Sea, which is the lowest place on Earth. And if you started the day on 20 degrees because of the snow, you're going to go down to about 80 degrees at the same day. And if you continue down the Arava Road, Highway 90, for about 3 hours later, you'll be able to snorkel in Africa, which is the Red Sea.
Israel certainly is a fascinating destination. What is popular to Christians as opposed to visitors from other faiths?
Well, Israel is the land of the Bible. It's the place that Jesus never left. If you look at all the other apostles, if you look at Mary, they all left Israel. Jesus grew up, ministered his entire life only within the land of Israel, even the land of Israel of today. So all the stories of the Bible, and I'm speaking here, of course, of our Christian brothers and sisters, all the stories of the Bible are 100% correct, and you will see them in Israel. You can go, I'll give you my example of my home. I grew up in Jezreel Valley. You can go and visit my home, and across from my home, you're going to see the town of Nazareth. Next to that, you're going to see the town of Nain, where the miracle of the son of the widow happened. If you continue just a little bit down the lower Galilee, you're going to go to Magdala, where Jesus helped Mary of Magdala, which she was possessed. From there, just walk just a little bit. You're going to reach Capernaum and see that synagogue that Jesus preached on that Sabbath eve. And right across from it is the town of Chorazim that was cursed by Jesus. So when you look at the topography of the land, nothing changed in the past 2,000 years. What's amazing about it, the names are exactly the same names. Because according to the law in Israel, the Ministry of Antiquity, you cannot name a settlement or you cannot name a new place until you dig underneath and try to find the root of that place. That is why all the names that we have today of all the villages and the cities are actually 100% correct, and they're built on ruins of ancient cities which appears in the Bible.
Interesting point you make here, the fact of irrefutable, undeniable proof. I was on the Golan Heights doing an interview, and I remember years ago I was standing on a little road on the Golan, and on one side was barbed wire with signs in English, Arabic, and Hebrew saying, danger mines, planted by Arabs. On the other side, vineyards planted by Jews. Both claim to love the same land, and what a paradox. But speaking of irrefutable proof, you dig a hole in the ground on the Golan Heights, and you look for scientific proof of the past, and you will find mosaic stones with Stars of David, proof that in Katsrin, Jews lived there long before Muhammad and Islam existed. So there's no proof of any Arab presence on the Golan, but endless proof that Jews have lived there long before Islam, as I said. So tell us a little bit more about these claims, different people claiming ownership of the land of Israel, whereas biblically and historically and scientifically you can prove the actual truth.
When you look historically, and I'm a history and Bible buff, we're going to share that with our audience. That's, for them to know who I am and what I'm talking about. Historically, when you look at it, the only city that was ever built from ground zero by the Muslims is the city of Ramle. That is the only site in Israel that was built by the Muslims. Everything else was built by Jews or Christian, leveled to the ground, and then rebuilt by the Muslims. Because if you dig beneath that, you will find the remains of the Jewish faith and the Christian faith. An interesting point, at the 8th century AD, there was a major earthquake. Now, the 8th century AD, that's a transition between the Muslim Empire and the Byzantine Empire. The Muslim conquered Israel in 636 AD, after the Battle of Yarmouk. And ever since then, you have basically a disappearance of the vast majority of Jews and Christians in Israel. Now, let us not forget, the Middle East was Christian and Jewish before Muhammad came to power. After that year of 749 AD, there is no more Jews and Christians in Israel. All the archaeological evidence show that after that earthquake, the Muslims actually denied any renewal and any rebuilding of churches and synagogues. That is why the foundation that you will find are dated to the Byzantine period. If you look also in terms of names, as we said before, there are no names in the Quran that mention in Israel, in no place. Jerusalem is not mentioned even once in the Quran. There's a place called Al-Aqsa. Al-Aqsa in Arabic meaning the further one, the one next to the edge. Edge could be also Iraq. Edge could be anything in the Muslim Empire of the 7th century. The only reason why Jerusalem is now in the Quran is because of political reasons, because of Omar ibn Khattab, who was an Arab general in the 7th century. That is the only reason. So when you look at artifacts, when you look at archaeological facts, and we all know that archaeology is a science, you will find both Byzantine Christian remains and Jewish remains. That's about it.
Is it also a fact that while Jerusalem, for a brief amount of time, was in Arab hands, no Muslim head of state ever visited Israel, which kind of suggests how unimportant Jerusalem was to Muslims? In fact, as you're saying, Jerusalem isn't mentioned once, but over, I think, 600 times in the Bible that Jews and Christians regard as holy. What is the truth with regard to the importance of Jerusalem?
I think that sometimes we, as people of the modern world, we should look for time capsules. Don't ever listen to a government clerk. I'm a government clerk, I can say that. Don't ever listen to them. Let's look at someone who is completely non-biased. One of my favorite authors, an American by the name Mark Twain. Mark Twain had been to Israel in the late 19th century, and he wrote a wonderful book by the name Innocents Abroad. Skip the first 200 pages, because he speaks about Venice, he speaks about Alexandria, and then he comes to Israel. He describes Israel, not just Jerusalem, all of Israel, as a pathetic land. He says, and if I cannot quote it in English, I can quote it in Hebrew, but he says that this is the most deserted place you've ever seen, miserable place you've ever seen, without even one tree to get a little bit of shade. One of my favorite things is to read Mark Twain underneath a beautiful forest that was planted by the JNF. Because when you look at Mark Twain, and Mark Twain was a tourist over there. He was there on a fam tour, what we call a familiarization tour. He was there on behalf of a company, of a tourist company. He was there with a group of pilgrims in around 1860 something. And what he writes about Israel, what he writes about Magdala, what he writes about Banyas, what he writes about Jerusalem makes your, I mean, it's unbelievable. And when you look at it today with the abundance of cafes and abundance of museums and piazzas all over the place in Israel, with running water, air conditioning everywhere, Mark Twain would have looked at that and tear his book. Because now it's fiction, then it was fact.
Omer, this is also very interesting, and I would like you to urge our audience that they should actually visit Israel. So many Jews, in fact, have never visited Israel, and the very best way, as I said earlier in this interview, is the best way to know the land and see the truth is to visit.
Absolutely. When I look at our mishpuche, the family, the Jewish faith, our roots come from the land of Israel. This is what we are, this is who we are. The word Jewish or the word Yehudi come from the word Yehuda, which is the tribe of David. That's how far back it is. So in order to understand the roots of the family, the roots of the faith, who we are, what it's all about, why we celebrate Sukkot, why we celebrate Pesach, why in that specific time of year, you have to come to Israel in order to understand that. If you want to gain understanding of your sons and daughters, for them to understand why they practice this, they have to be in Israel, they have to be bar mitzvah in Israel, they have to see at least one Shabbat in the Kotel. That's for the Jewish faith. For our Christian brothers and sisters, to see the truth of the Bible. Because the Bible is the same Bible. When they come to Jerusalem, when they see Garden Gethsemane, when they see either the Holy Sepulchre or the Garden Tomb, it doesn't matter, it's just the idea of the suffering of Jesus. Where they see the truth of the kings, the truth of the prophets, the truth of Isaiah, when he says in Isaiah 2:3, from out of Zion shall go for the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, Ki mitzion titzeh Torah udvar Adonai mirushalayim. This is what we see today. Out of Zion came out the law. We all practice it, if it's in our synagogues or in our churches. That's the prophet was right. So when you are there, when you're in the city of David, you will see the palace of David. When you're going to go and visit Greece and climb up Mount Olympus, you're not going to find the palace of Zeus. But if you're going to come to Jerusalem and visit the city of David, you will see the palace of David. You will see the tunnel that Hezekiah built against Assyria. You will hear Isaiah saying, don't fear, because the same way this army came, this is how it's going to leave. You will see the prophecies. You will see the truth of the Bible, of what makes us both Jews and Christian, because we follow the same book. This is the root of our faith. This is the root of who we are. These are the roots of Western civilization. So if you want to understand better who you are, if you want to reach your family, if you want to reach your synagogue, if you want to reach your church, the place you have to visit at least once in your life is the Holy Land, which is, of course, Israel.
Very interesting point. So in this world we live in today, where there's so much information, so much misinformation, and people today, just as always, searching for their own identity, trying to find truth. Individuals can just go to Israel and they'll find their truth in Israel, whether they're Christian or Jewish.
We say in the Ministry of Tourism, once you visit Israel, you'll never be the same. And I can tell you, I'm a fourth generation Israeli. I have been to Jerusalem. I lived in Jerusalem for 7 years. And every time I used to open my bedroom window and look at the old city, I was never again the same. And I lived there. The impact is unbelievable. And I'm just going to share that with our audience. When you go to see glaciers, I've just been to one of your most beautiful national parks up in the Rockies, and I've seen glaciers. Beautiful. Did it change my life? No, it didn't. I've seen glaciers in South America and I've seen glaciers in Canada as well. It's still gorgeous, but it didn't change my life. Every time that I see the power of faith, every time that I feel the Shabbat, the smell of the Shabbat, of Saturday night, falling down, descending on the holy sites of Jerusalem, changed my life every single Friday. That's why we say when you come to Israel, you'll never be the same.
Absolutely, and I really believe everyone should visit Israel at least once. Sir, thank you so very, very much for being with us today. It's been very informative. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure, and see you in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem.
Absolutely. I'll be right back.
Shalom, and welcome to The Bible Comes to Life. Join us as we explore the stories of the Bible and experience them where they actually happen in the land of Israel. I'm Omer Eshel, official Holy Land specialist representing the Israel Government Tourist Office, North and South America, and your host. Today, we will visit one of the most important and significant sites in Israel, both for Christians and Jews, the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives is mentioned for the first time in 2 Samuel, when David flees from his son Absalom. We read in chapter 15, verse 30, "So David went up by the ascent of Mount of Olives. He wept as he went up, and he had his head covered and went barefoot. And all the people who were with him covered their heads and went up, weeping as they went up." The Mount of Olives is located in the east side of Jerusalem, overlooking the city. The view from the mountain was the first view of the city that every pilgrim coming from the east would have seen. In the Jewish tradition, the Mount of Olives is the place of the resurrection of the dead. As we read in Zechariah 14:4, "And in that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall be split in two, from east to west, making a very large valley. Half of the mountain shall move towards the north, and half of it towards the south." Accordingly, the Mount of Olives is one of the most sacred places in Judaism. The cemetery there is the largest and oldest Jewish cemetery in the world. You will find tombs here from 3000 BCE alongside tombs from today. It's considered a great honor to be buried at the Mount of Olives, as those buried there are believed to be the first to be resurrected.
This concludes our special program for today from On Location at the Standard Club in Chicago. I'm Richard Peritz. Thank you for being with us.